Joining me here on the Rich Eisen Show on the Mercedes-Benz Vans phone line to talk about the 150th Open Championship that Cameron Smith essentially ripped away from the rest of the field, including Rory McIlroy, who finished third, is senior writer from ESPN, Kevin Van Valkenburg, back here on the Rich Eisen Show. How are you doing, Kevin?
Good, Rich. It sounds like your desk could use a candle that you could light for Rory McIlroy.
You know what? We could. We could pour one out. Obviously in the sports world, a lot of discussion about what somebody who loses didn't do. And we can kind of get to that in a minute. But that would also, I don't think, give full faith and credit to what Cameron Smith did in front of an entire golf world, and also gathered patronage on the old course rooting for Rory McIlroy. That was unbelievable. Where does that rank for you, Kevin?
It's pretty high up. I mean, I think you could maybe the only thing you could quibble with is that the old course isn't quite the test that it once was, where guys would have to sort of choose what, clubs they were going to hit into greens because, the nuances of it. They're all kind of pound and driver. Although Cam was kind of one of those guys who strategically laid back on certain holes. Like he was the one who was thinking his way around. How many guys are going to shoot a 30 on the back nine? It's really only happened a couple times. Nicklaus at the 86 Masters is a sort of a famous example. And that's kind of what had to happen. If you played this round 50 times, Rory probably wins 48 of them. Then he didn't really play poorly. He just didn't play great, and Cam did.
Well, did he play aggressive enough, do you think, Rory? What do you think about that?
I think there's some holes that you could quibble with where maybe he should have gotten a little more aggressive. But I actually think what's weird to think about is I think he played this final round a lot like Tiger Woods would have played, which is basically like, hey, you got to come and get me. Like I'm gonna basically do nothing wrong. A lot of people sort of don't really remember how Tiger was so good at playing defense in those final rounds. Like he didn't really throw up 65s unless he had to chase, and then he never really won one of those except for the 2019 Masters where he came from behind. And so, there's a couple where, Rory probably could have tried to throw the ball, back to a couple back pins. But to be honest, he just played really mistake-free golf. And it's hard to sort of look at a specific decision and say, hey, you really, he left that eagle putt one revolution short. It's hard to sort of say, well, yeah, you should have been more aggressive on those putts. He just couldn't really. He got aggressive on 17 and made a great swing into the toughest hole in the world, essentially, and just couldn't make that putt. So that's kind of what it came down to. He went up against truly one of the great putting performances ever in golf, I think.
I agree, and it's interesting you bring up Tiger, Kevin, because I don't know who it was on the NBC Sports coverage. I think it might have been Nota Begay, but at the very outset of the coverage, a text message from Tiger was read on the broadcast. Did you hear that? Kevin?
Yeah, it is. So it's a text to John Wood. It was Matt Kuchar's old caddy. And
that's
Tiger
who it was.
Essentially said, take care of the short par fours, make your birdies there, make the birdies in the par fives, maybe do a couple things here or there, but just basically clean up everything, play a tidy round, and you'll be fine. And that's kind of exactly what Rory did, except for he didn't do a couple special things here or there. And I was sort of actually thinking about the 2005 Masters where Tiger and Chris DeMarco were way out ahead of the field. And essentially Tiger kind of did that, played really safe. And there was that one amazing chip that we all remember. And that was kind of the essentially the difference, the amazing thing. And Rory just never had that amazing one moment. If he had one of those,
that's right,
it's probably enough to hold off Cam. But he just didn't have that one amazing moment.
Yeah, Tiger said no three putts, no bogeys, just and play a boring and get a boring 68. And had he gotten a boring 68, there would have been extra holes even. That still wouldn't have been enough. That's how good Cameron Smith was. I've got Kevin Van Valkenburg from ESPN here on the Rich Eisen Show. Who is Cameron Smith for those who may just only know him as the guy with the mullet that they see on television? Walk me through him, if you don't mind.
Yeah, so Cam's a great Australian player, although was never really regarded as one of the top, young players in Australia coming up. There's a lot of other guys that were sort of more highly regarded than he was, and he is just an unbelievable wedge player and putter, and is a very fearless dude, he won the Players' Championship earlier this year, and he did it really by basically being aggressive and going after a lot of pins, and that's kind of his MO, is he just doesn't really care too much about the sort of fear that grips a lot of golfers, and sometimes that leads to total disaster. He makes occasionally dumb decisions. He did kind of on the final hole of the Players this year. All he had to do was sort of punch out into the fairway, and he tried to hit a little more of an aggressive hook and hit it in the water, and almost ended up blowing a championship that he had sort of got fought all day to get in position for. He drives the ball kind of crooked, but he's just an artist with the putter, and really in a way that I'm not sure we've seen in the last few years. I mean, if you had a putt right now that had to go in, and anybody on earth could take it, you'd probably want to pick Cam Smith to roll it in.
Well, I mean, on the back nine, Kevin, I honestly thought every time he had anything lined up, it was going in. It really the hole looked like the ocean to me. Just watching it, I can only imagine it was in his head.
I mean, it was really like watching a basketball player get on a run where it's like they're unconscious. Like Jordan throwing in all those threes in the finals, or Steph,
shrugging,
doing the same thing. Like it's just he as soon as he stared over it, he wasn't going to miss. And what's crazy is that just the day before, had a lot of those similar putts and couldn't make anything. So it sort of shows you the fickle nature of putting, is that sometimes you see the line and you can judge the speed and everything is just going in, and some days you don't have it. And sorry for Rory, but, the one day that he needed, Cam Smith to be mortal, he absolutely was not.
And especially his final putt of the day, it should be noted, broke a tie that suddenly occurred because Cameron Young, his fellow Cameron, their shirts were the same, right? They had the same Titleist hat. Their names were the same. This is obviously a different haircut, a little bit different build. But, Cameron Young made that eagle. Again, that's the shot we were looking for from Rory to try and tie things up or make a threat or hold off Cam Smith. But instead, Smith had that putt, very makeable, obviously, which he made. Some people might even lipped it out. He just dead center cut that thing. I will never forget it. That was unbelievable. It really was.
It was really amazing to watch Cam Young hang in there. I think he wasn't really part of the narrative of the day, which is like, could Rory hold off Cam Smith? And yet Cam Young was kind of just doing. He's an amazing, I think, young player. He's certainly already sewn up like Rookie of the Year. Could have easily gotten in a playoff at the PGA Championship at Southern Hills. Drives it a mile. He's a lot of fun to watch. And I think when he rolled that eagle in, it was like, holy cow! Like, actually, this really could might not be wrapped up for Cam Smith yet. That was not like the easiest up and down through the Valley of Sin there. And yet, just like he showed on 17, like Cam Smith he gets pace and he understands like where to leave the next putt so that he can roll it in.
Kevin Van Valkenburg, a few more minutes left with the ESPN senior writer here on the Rich Eisen Show. Where do things stand now? LIV Tour, PGA Tour, the RNA, as we saw, did not do any favors in terms of tee times and pairings to those on the LIV Tour. At least that was the sense that a lot of people got. Where do things stand on that now that, again, football's starting? I think this story is going to get lost a little bit in the shuffle. All the so-called majors, as we have termed them, are over, even the non-so-called. It appears the FedEx Cup still remains. Where do things stand, essentially, Kevin?
Well, it was kind of nice to have a week of really muted LIV talk, at least. But, the rumors were still percolating all about whether Cam Smith is going to be the next person to jump or whether he does.
Well, there you go. Ooh. I think Greg Norman just pulled the plug.
Greg Norman was listening.
You think he was standing behind him the whole time while he was making the cut?
I'm curious where he's going to go with that, because those are the rumors that are hot. Henrik Stenson, too, it looks like is going.
And he's going to have his Ryder Cup captaincy stripped.
Yeah, and the thing with Cam Smith, too, is that he's now going to have 5-year exemptions at all the majors. He can play in the British Open until he's 60 now. And if his price tag for LIV probably just went way, way up if he hasn't signed already. And so that's one of the hot rumors out there this week.
Well, that's the way things are going to go. One would think is that the LIV Tour will be on top of whoever wins any major championship. That'll be the first phone call that they make.
Or showing up in the middle of the night with a bag at their crib.
You're going to get a call from Wayne Gretzky. Wayne on line one. No, seriously. Apparently that's
Is that happening? I haven't seen that.
That's apparently he's part of the entree.
Well, news just broke that David Feherty's leaving NBC to become an analyst for LIV.
Oh, is that right?
That just broke in the last couple minutes by Andrew Marchand, and Charles Barkley is out there. He has said that, I would hurt my mom or something for $200 million, and now he's being rumored to have an involvement in LIV now.
I believe Kevin's back on. I think we got him back on. Kevin, did Greg Norman pull the plug on that conversation? Is that what happened?
I think it was a power outage, but we can't rule anything out, Rich.
Okay, so you were saying about, that it was interesting to get a week off of the LIV talk. And by the way, in the conversation, in the interim between your phone going out and then this, it appears David Feherty's leaving NBC Sports to start calling matches for the LIV Tour. By the way, Kevin.
Wow.
So what do you think?
I mean, it's not surprising either. I mean, there's just so much money involved that, I think that if you don't have moral issues with going to work for LIV, then they're just going to keep picking off more and more people. I mean, Cam Smith was asked in the press conference afterwards if he was interested, and he kind of gave one of those non-denials that Koepka did of, how dare you ask me about this right now? And I think everybody thinks that he's going to be the next player to go, and there's a lot of rumors about Hideki Matsuyama. I mean, I think you can sort of feel a lot of the players who were sort of most adamant about this not going, like Rory and Jon Rahm, starting to soften a little bit, because not that they're going to go, but they feel sort of like maybe the PGA Tour and the DP World Tour ought to come to more of a kind of an agreement of understanding, because right now the Ryder Cup is going to look like it's devastated. I mean, Henrik Stenson is rumored to sort of being stripped of his Ryder Cup captaincy because he wants to go and take millions from the LIV Tour. So I think we're going to see more of this stuff play out after the FedEx Cup is over, after the President's Cup is over. I mean, there's a lot of talk that the Australian guys are interested in going as soon as the President's Cup's come and gone, because that's kind of their Ryder Cup. So we're never going to see the end of this, really, I think, because it's just the Saudis have too much money.
Well, I mean, if now David Feherty starts calling matches for the LIV Tour, and apparently Barkley is going to be talking to them, and suddenly you're putting together an entertaining package around it. What are you hearing about possible television partners, or that's still just verboten because of the contracts that these television partners have with the PGA Tour? I mean, that's what ended up, in all honesty, the AFL getting a television package is what really made them a real threat to the NFL and led to a merger. So what about that? What are you hearing about that right now, Kevin?
I mean, I don't think if there are negotiations for that going on right now, none of it has kind of leaked out. I still think that it's a little bit of a too hot of a product to handle, especially considering all of the various conflicts that are going on right now. But, if you're a upstart, television network, or even if you're, a straight up kind of, more along the lines of an online deal, but you have some media, cable channel rights, or would you be interested in taking a, swing at this? I think, of course, you'd listen. And whether or not, that's enough to sort of establish it permanently as a kind of a permanent thing, I don't know. I think probably once they get sort of an actual TV deal, it becomes a whole lot more of a reality that it's just never going to go away. And the PGA Tour is suddenly like facing such an existential threat of like, what happens if one of your guys like Justin Thomas or Rory does cave? I think all of that, we're still at the very beginning of this LIV stuff. That's what's kind of, I think people go to overlook. There's been so many times along this process where people said, oh, well, that's dead, or, oh, the only guys that are going to go are guys that don't matter. We're still just really at the very beginning. We haven't even gotten to the lawsuit sort of stage yet, where Phil Mickelson is filing a lawsuit to be able to keep his lifetime membership on the PGA Tour. So I think this is going to play out kind of over the next couple of years. So then last one for you on this then is what's the general sense of how long of a game the Saudis and Greg Norman and the consortium that's running this are planning? Like, what's the idea of, like, okay, like 3-4 years from now, there'll be 3, 4, 5 billion in the hole and not even remotely close to making it back, and so what? And right? I mean, yeah. What's the long game here, do you think? I think that when we think about the LIV Tour, that we need to sort of think about it in a way it's different than any other sort of sports tour that you could imagine. Like, we know that they have essentially a 4-year plan that they've kind of laid out, and over the first 2 years, they've talked in private about spending, a couple $1 billion, and whether that, to a normal sort of person, a league that essentially makes very little and loses $2 billion would seem to be totally unsustainable. But if you're the Saudis and you're sort of saying, hey, this is sort of helping improve our global relationship with business leaders, with investors. There's more people who are interested in helping us build a high-speed train in the middle of this new city that we're building in the desert. There's no sort of direct exchange of this has to be profitable to them for them to want to keep it going. It's really just sort of, is this kind of helping in a lot of ways launder our reputation, which has taken some much deserved hits, and helping the sort of larger community say, you know what, we want to help the Saudis kind of modernize their country and their society. And so we can see that these golfers were not sort of canceled or criticized too much for doing this. So we're going to go ahead and go forward with that. And so 4 years from now, if it's lost $4 billion, that's kind of a drop in the bucket when you're essentially looking at an investment fund that's right now worth $600 billion and might be worth $1 trillion within, a decade. That's a pretty good investment if you're sort of saying to yourself, you know what, Japan or various European countries or China is willing to invest money in us because they feel like it's a beneficial business relationship with them, and they kind of like cozying up and playing golf with Hideki Matsuyama or Henrik Stenson or whatever. And so I don't think there's ever a moment, the LIV people will say differently that, this has to be profitable eventually. But I really think that if you just think of it in larger global terms, what is a country that has an enormous amount of money, what is a bill coming to them really worth $2 or $3 billion if they feel like it overall improves their chances to sort of get people to sell them things that they need to modernize their country?
In the meantime, though, we're going to watch incredible major tournament championship moments like Sundays, and then ask the winner, are you going to go to the LIV Tour? Or 1 year, the winner will make that announcement upon winning. Or 1 year, I'm serious, and then 1 year we'll wind up seeing an actual LIV Tour member already certified winning a major championship. And that will change the calculus and the dynamic every single time. That's the way it's going to go for a while, it looks like, Kevin.
Absolutely. And I think there's still a thing kind of hanging out there of how many of these guys will be able to get into majors through world golf ranking points. There's going to be a sort of reckoning, I think, that comes in the next year over whether the official world golf rankings will recognize LIV Tour events and whether that'll be enough to get guys directly into the majors. Like for someone like Cam Smith, he doesn't really care about that at the moment because he's got an exemption for life into the British Open and for the next 5 years into all the other majors. So he can go and basically play the British Open forever and all those other majors until he's deep into his 30s and figure out the hope that this is kind of figured out. If you're, someone who hasn't won a major, a Taylor Gooch or, one of the other sort of younger guys who went to LIV and you want to play in these majors, you're going to find yourself in a tough spot if the OWGR never says, hey, we're welcoming you guys. We're going to weigh these points accordingly. So I think you're right. I think Dustin Johnson could easily win a major and sort of it could be a huge thing for LIV. I think Brooks Koepka, you never know, could win another major. He's going to be exempted to a lot of them for a long time. So all of that is going to come to a head. And you're right. What if we get a professional wrestling situation where a guy, rips open his shirt and is wearing a LIV shirt on the 18th tee or whatever, and sort of says, thanks to Greg Norman for all the benefits that I've gotten from him.
And I think everyone needs to be prepared for it. And in the meantime, all the players that are like, this is a media-driven thing. You guys keep bringing it up. Well, the reason why it's keep being brought up is because points are on the line, and we don't know if we're going to see you next year. We don't know. I mean, this is way too much of an open wound in a fluid situation. That's why it's being discussed, not just to stir anything
And
up.
a lot of the players seem so angry about being asked about it.
Right.
The way I sort of responded is, if you were proud about this, if you felt good about your decision, why not just own it? Say, yeah, I think it's a great opportunity. Like, I don't really care if you ask me about it because I think that I'm really honored to be taken, considered for being compensated the way I think I deserve. But they're really defensive and they're really angry about a lot of it. And I think in part because there is a little level of shame. They know, like, whether it's Phil Mickelson or Ian Poulter or somebody, Brooks Koepka, some of these guys have snapped at reporters about it. They know that what they're doing is kind of goes against what they were previously stood for.
Kevin, thanks for the time. Look for my call again. Appreciate it. Thanks again.
And you betcha.
Thank you. You bet. That's Kevin Van Valkenburg of ESPN. Right here on the Rich Eisen Show.